There seems to be some amount of collective delusion about Ghostbusters toys. Many swear up and down they remember Ghostbusters toys based on the 1984 movie. I think it simply boils down to people being unable to remember specific years of their past. So for anyone in doubt, let me take you back to 1984. It was a rainy Tennessee day, and my father had just taken me to see Ghostbusters in the theater. We get home, and I go play Ghostbusters out in the backyard. When Christmas comes around, I would have asked for Ghostbusters toys, but there weren't any. There was nothing to ask for. So when the Real Ghostbusters came out in 1986 on ABC Saturday morning, I was chomping at the bit for a Venkman action figure. I'd waited long enough.
We gotta get back to the past, to the 20th century. Digging through the bubble wrap into your memories. Back was the collector, he's protecting what we find. Relentless heavy metal guns keep us safe through time. Retro blasting.
What's with the show?
Just the corners of your mind. Retro blasting.
Why?
The stuff you love since you were nine.
Wireless.
We're blasting into the past to see what will still last. Retro blasting.
We found them at K&K Toys at our local mall. I snagged Peter Venkman and Ray Stantz. Why Venkman had creepy green eyes still bothers me. It wasn't long afterward that I experienced a significant durability problem. The four Ghostbusters had a rather cool gimmick to simulate their proton streams, a curving wand of plastic that extended from their guns. The wands were different colors for each character, and these beams had handles that came out of the back of the guns. You could twirl the handle back and forth, and it would kind of look like the particle beams from the movie. I was playing with the Venkman action figure outside, and I dropped him a short distance to the ground by accident. And when I did, the handle on the back of his Neutrona wand broke off, which made it impossible to use the wand. A few days later, after much lamenting, I had another Peter Venkman, and this time it was kid gloves with the Ghostbusters figures from then on. They never went outside, and they were played with very carefully. Finding these proton packs intact on loose examples is a miniature miracle. And when you store them, store the packs in their own separate box so they can't be crushed by even the slightest pressure. Those proton streams will break off before you can blink. Interesting to note, the original figures have packs with the yellow cord running into the bottom of the pack. Kenner revised this to have the cords running into the center of the back of the packs. So if you're looking for the first release, the original set, you want those yellow cords to be running into the bottom of the pack, not into the top center. Each Ghostbuster came with a ghost to catch, so you had instant play scenarios, which was great. And it was then I learned another annoying trait of these figures. The guns weren't held in the hands. They were slipped over the forearms by these brackets. The brackets were also able to attach to the side of the packs. However, the brackets were weak and often broke. Sometimes it was because they were tough to remove from the packs. Other times it was because they broke while being attached over the figure's arms. In short, everything about the proton packs on these figures was a nightmare of fragility. When I got Egon and Winston, I had the four Ghostbusters, and my interest in the line came to a screeching halt. And I think that's because, beyond the core heroes, the Ghostbusters toy line gets really screwy, and my 8-year-old self just wasn't interested. The Stay Puft Marshmallow Man was a big letdown, standing only slightly taller than Egon. Meanwhile, the Slimer Ghost was almost larger than Stay Puft, even though he should have been smaller than everybody. Eventually, Kenner made a big Stay Puft plush toy, and suggested on the box you could use the figures with it. I guess that was an improvement, but I didn't buy into it. The rest of the ghosts in the toy line were these very weird figures that didn't appear in the TV show at all. You had football player ghosts, policeman ghosts, granny ghosts, demonic toilets. Ugh, it was bad. Why couldn't they have made some of the scary ghosts from the show, like the Boogeyman, or Watt, or the Sandman? Some of the ghost figures were more beastly, but still too gimmicky. There was one that was like a Russian doll. One was a pull cord racer. There was a skeleton guy with a spring-loaded rib cage. He kind of looked like a smaller decompose from the Inhumanoids. One was just a ghost-shaped bathtub for slime that you'd fill up and then dump your figures into it. That brings me to a major trend this toy line took advantage of, the slime craze. It started with Masters of the Universe and Hordak's Slime Pit. The slime was sold in small canisters and colored a neon yellow-green. Kenner's Real Ghostbusters made it a few colors, the most popular being purpley pink, and called it ectoplasm. Even though in the original film the slime was a clear mucus-like color, in Ghostbusters 2 they tied the movie to the toy line by changing the color to purpley pink. As a kid, I never purchased one can of this stuff, because you could never completely wash it off. You'd rinse and it would leave these crusty colored chunks behind in the nooks and crannies of your action figures. As an adult, I've managed to collect 3 of these cans for my collection. And I know they haven't been opened in decades, and I certainly haven't opened them since I've had them. But I'm curious. I wonder what this stuff looks like now. Apparently, ectoplasm has a very good shelf life. 27 years and counting. There were 2 toys in the line I really wanted as a kid but never had. One was the Ghostbusters Firehouse, and the other was the Ecto-1 Ectomobile. I think I didn't acquire these because the figures were so fragile, and there were no good bad guys to collect, so I just kind of gave up on the whole line. But now that I have them, looking back in retrospect, I don't think I missed out on very much. First, we'll start with the Ecto-1. You couldn't fit all 4 Ghostbusters in it because it inexplicably only had seating for 2, unless you included this silly gunner's chair on the top. The entire rear of the vehicle was reserved for this retractable claw mechanism to catch little ghost figures. Such a wasted opportunity for a flagship vehicle. As a kid that was used to having a Millennium Falcon that could carry all the heroes, and a G.I. Joe APC with seating for like 20 characters, the Ecto not having enough seats for the 4 heroes is a major fail. But the Ecto-1's sins, they pale in comparison to the Firehouse. Essentially, it's just a tower of plastic. It has the big front doors and the Ghostbusters sign, and the front looks pretty slick, but once you open those red doors, everything goes downhill. First, you'll notice that the arc of the doorway isn't cut into the facade of the Firehouse. That's because the second floor starts at that height. But what else does that mean? Well, the Ecto-1 can't drive into the Firehouse, unless you remove the gunner chair it was designed to have. Once you get inside the Firehouse, you'll find that the Ecto-1 is actually too long and will either stick out of the back side or the front doors. Plus, it fills up the entire lower level, leaving no playroom left. The upper floors are desolate, with only a series of slime grates so you can douse the playset in ectoplasm. There's a chintzy fire pole mechanism so your Ghostbusters can race to the bottom much like the movie. But it has some drawbacks. For one, it's dependent on even weight distribution. 2 Ghostbusters must ride at all times for it to work. If you use one figure, the carousel gets stuck, and oftentimes when you use 2, one will end up flying off before they get to the bottom. Plus, it's a pain in the butt to get that carousel back up to the top of the pole to reset the ride. It doesn't really matter. There's nothing on the top floor for the Ghostbusters to do. And there isn't on the second floor now that I'm thinking about it. What really annoys me is a complete lack of stairs to give the characters access to the different levels. I like a certain amount of logic to my playsets. The Death Star had an elevator. The Hall of Justice had an elevator and stairs. The Ewok Village had an elevator. The Firehouse doesn't have that detail, and it bugs me. The playset did come with the Ghost Containment Unit, which was a nifty little trick made of red plastic that you could deposit the smaller ghosts into, although only one ghost at a time fit in the trap piece. More often you just ditched the trap trick and used it as a lid. But the containment unit was way too small, so the larger ghost figures wouldn't fit inside it at all. If you've been keeping track, you've seen that so far Kenner has made the 4 Ghostbusters, the Ecto-1, the Firehouse, and an assortment of ghouls and goblins for the Ghostbusters to encounter. So what's left? Well, this is the moment when the Real Ghostbusters forayed into the world of needless variant figures, a vortex from which Kenner never managed to escape. When Kenner made the Star Wars line, the different versions of the figures were motivated by the different costumes in the movies. It felt organic. Han Solo had a figure with his winter wear, and Luke Skywalker had a version with his X-Wing outfit. It made sense. With the Real Ghostbusters, they had Fright Features figures that made goofy expressions of fear. They had screaming heroes that, well, screamed. Super Fright Features, Power Pack heroes, Slimed heroes, and Ecto-Glow heroes. The problem with all of these is twofold. One, they utilize these strange designs that don't reflect anything seen on the TV show, or anything remotely realistic. These costumes never appear in the show, nor do many of the weapons they come with. Two, their gimmicks are superfluous features that are either redundant in some way, or are more easily achieved through imagination. In the case of the slimed heroes, why would I go and buy those when I could just buy the slime and then dump it on the figures I already have? As for the different Fright Feature figures, a kid generally infuses their toys with emotions as their imagination requires. A toy that is designed to be scared at the push of a button can only play that one note, and is about as useful during play as a rock. Maybe less so. I mean, yeah, the engineering was kinda cool, but the long-term play potential was very thin. Just give me action figures that look like the ones that are on the TV show with some relatively accurate accessories, and leave out all the invasive mechanical gizmos. Kenner took the useless gimmicks to their vehicles as well, with the re-release of the Ecto-1 as the Ecto-1A when Ghostbusters 2 came out. They simply applied a bunch of gaudy new stickers to the original Ecto-1 toy, including a ton of stickers that made the car look like it's splattered with slime. Like I said before, you could just slime the car with the actual ectoplasm if you wanted to. Why would any kid want to put permanent slime stickers on their Ectomobile?
Hey, Michael?
At what point did Kenner actually think this slime sticker feature was the best way to go?
Michael,
Yeah.
what do you want me to do with this battle-damaged X-Wing?
What the hell are you doing?
I have to empty this container for the shot.
Well, you could have just emptied it into a different container.
I didn't think about that. Cool Whip.